In 2013, Great Bear Resources was in the midst of a challenging time. Its newly minted CEO, Chris Taylor, had the seemingly impossible task of finding the company's next project. Bob Singh, VP of Exploration, and Chris Taylor knew there was a lot more gold to be discovered. Bob created a 3D model of the Dixie Limb Zone using a century's worth of historical data. Chris, a structural geologist by training, knew something didn't add up. And as they say, the rest is history.
My partner Bob Singh and I had been looking for basically a property that had a unique set of characteristics. And we knew that we wanted to find something that was going to be right beside infrastructure in a mining jurisdiction where if we were fortunate to make a major discovery, it could go through all the way to production.
Based on the model, Chris and Bob were convinced that previous explorers had misinterpreted the geology and that the Dixie Limb Zone had a lot more gold to offer.
That first time that the data was mocked up in 3D, it was really obvious that we had a system, a gold mineralized system that had a great deal of predictability to it. We had a double-edged sword with Great Bear, and that was that we had the infrastructure advantages and the name credibility of being in the Red Lake District, a major mining district, but we had this perception that there was going to be limited continuity.
Trusting the science and their combined expertise, they acquired the mine for a modest $200,000 and began to assemble their dream team.
If you had to ask me whether the asset was more important than the team, I would honestly say the team was more important. You know, you can't run a successful exploration program from the office in Vancouver or Toronto. You need qualified people that live it. You're watching the rock come out of the ground in drill core. You need those expertise to make something as successful as Great Bear.
Not long afterwards, their first drill proved them right.
I believe it was the fourth drill hole in the project, which was the best drill hole drilled to date. And the reason it was so good is because it was following that predictability from the gold system, and we effectively proved our hypothesis, and we managed to validate that exploration model.
Then Chris made another invaluable discovery in marketing pro Rita Bennett. With her on board, Great Bear was able to secure the necessary financing.
She was ultimately our VP of Corporate Communications, and that was very important for us to basically raise awareness within the broader market. Working with Rita, we set up a whole number of different, basically interview formats, which were interesting for shareholders to engage with. And we'd have a very interactive format on updates with our investor base. But when you're onto something completely exceptional, like the Dixie discoveries that we made with Great Bear, sometimes you have to believe in the dream. Ultimately, by holding on and trusting in a good team to follow the science and do the right job, you know, we generated a return for our investors, which is tens of thousands of percent.
Discoveries continued in quick succession with the Hinge Zone, followed by the LP Zone, a multi-kilometer gold fault.
Just about everything in Red Lake is hosted by these mafic and ultramafic type units, but what we found was these more felsic type units, and they're not supposed to be the mineralized hosts. But the first drilling that we did into them was discovering wide intervals of significant gold. And effectively we'd step out for kilometer after kilometer after kilometer, and we'd hit the same rocks, which is really important, and the same mineralized system. We realized early on in the process we had something that was in the Red Lake area, but very much like other deposits in Ontario, say like the Hemlo deposit, with significant shearing and significant predictability. And that was the difference maker for the LP fault.
In 2022, Great Bear Resources was scooped up by Kinross Gold for a whopping $1.8 billion. What's more, the deal went through even before an estimate of resources for Dixie was compiled.
The reason that we were able to get to that point was because we had a huge amount of transparency with our data disclosure.
In recognition of their discovery of the Dixie Gold Deposit, Chris Taylor and the Great Bear Resources exploration team are the recipients of the prestigious PDAC 2023 Bill Dennis Award.